Fun agents.
Good afternoon. Sorry to.
No, please.
Everyone's chit-chatting so nicely. Good afternoon. Today is Thursday, June 29th, and it's a little after 4. Sorry about the delay. This is the EoTC meeting, the Elected Officials Transportation Committee, and we are going to call the meeting to order, and we're going to do roll call. So when I go through, if you're here, just say you're here. So Town of Snowmass Village, I'm here. Mayor Madsen.
I am here, and thank you for hosting, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hope you're still having fun. Tom Fritzstein.
Here.
Britta Gustafson.
Here.
Susan Roll.
Here.
Great. Pitkin County. Francie Jacober. Here. Steve Child.
Here.
Patty Clapper. Kelly McNicholas Curry.
Here.
Greg Poshman.
He's here. He's here.
He's here. He was here. I saw him. City of Aspen, Mayor Tory. John Doyle.
Here.
Bill Guth.
Here.
Ward Howenstein. Sam Rose.
Here.
Great. Thank you. Okay. First on the packet is the agenda. Do you want to, are you going to go?
Sure. Okay. Thank you. I'm Linda Dupreece, Regional Transportation Director. I'm also going to introduce our EoTC staff. Brian Pettit from Pitkin County, Steve Rose, sorry, Sam. Pete Wright, Pete Rice, City of Aspen, and Sam Guarino, Town of Snowmass Village. So our agenda for today is first approval of decisions reached from April 6th. Then we have public comment for items not on the agenda, quick EoTC member updates, a presentation from SGM and DHM on the Buttermilk Pedestrian Crossing Project, and then we'll have some quick updates on some work plan items.
Okay, great. So do we want to start with the minutes from April 6th? Do you want to go through the decisions reached? And if anybody has any questions, if you're online, I do have my Teams up, so if you raise your hand, hopefully I'll be able to see you.
In April, we didn't have any action minutes, but our discussion about the HOV lane, some of y'all had some directives for us that we are planning to come back to you in August with CDOT to give us some information on those items, since E.O.T.C. has sort of limited purview over motor vehicle functions in the valley. So those items were, you asked us to look at, do some research on typical HOV lane configurations that are different from our 2 lanes each direction situation here. The 2-person versus 3-person regulation and how that relates to the record of decision. Everybody wants to see some speed enforcement on Highway 82. And then we wanted to discuss with RAFTA sort of their take on how the HOV lane works with buses on the right, HOV lane on the right side and buses entering and exiting the road. So that's what we did in April.
Great. Does anyone have any questions for Linda? Anyone online? I'm looking. If I don't see your hand up, you can shout out, but I don't think anybody does. Anybody here? Questions on April? Okay. So with that, I would guess we would just take a motion to approve the action minutes from the April 6th meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thanks, Patty. Thank you, John. And we're going to do a roll call vote. Yes, Linda, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Town of Snowmass Village, Alyssa Shank, aye. Mayor Madsen.
Aye.
Tom Fritzstein.
Aye.
Britta Gustafson.
Aye.
Susan Roll.
Aye.
Great. Pitkin County. Francie Jacober. Aye. Steve Child.
Aye.
Patty Clapper. Aye. Kelly McNicholas Curry.
Aye.
Greg Poshman. Aye. Great. Hi. City of Aspen, Mayor Tory. John Doyle,
Yes.
Bill Guth. Yes. Ward Howenstein. Yes. Sam Rose.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Next up is going to be public comment for any non-agenda items. Oh, look who we have in the public. Come on up.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem.
It's nice to see you. Thanks for
Nice
coming
to
out to
see you.
Snowmass.
Thank you. I'm here today. My name is Rachel Richards. I'm a citizen of Aspen and a taxpayer within the RTA and the EoTC districts. I was in meetings 30 years ago when we formed the half penny. I campaigned for it, I donated for it, and I was out doing door-to-door on Halloween night with Dan Blankenship to make sure it passed. So I appreciate the care and diligence and thoughtfulness that you all put into how it is expended. I remember meeting with Mayor Hooker during those meetings, and his concern was that eventually Snowmass Village might see a 4-lane road, that we've had passing lanes now, but he was very concerned about traffic growth in the future here to avoid that. And so we are all part of managing traffic growth, agreeing to find tools to do so. And to that end, I invite all the EoTC members to participate in the future design and the design goals of the new corridor for the entrance to Aspen, which the Aspen City Council is considering. As I understand it from newspaper clippings, they are looking to approve a new corridor, a different corridor than one in the preferred alternative, which of course opens up the potential of a new record of decision and a new environmental impact statement. Beyond a lot of time and a lot of money to complete something like that, for the Federal Highway Administration and the CDOT, the real question is going to be, how does a new design serve the traveling public of all of Highway 82, not just the wishes of the community of Aspen? So that record of decision, to be valid and to answer those questions, we'll have to study all potential alternatives, not just the corridor that the council would prefer to avoid the Merle property. So we're going to see a study of an unrestricted 4-lane, the split shot, the sideways shot, the twisty bridge, and maybe even Tony Cronenberg's aerial tram as the new potential solutions. I think the current council is headed in the direction of a 3-lane reversible 3rd lane that would change depending on traffic demand. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, we tend to have as much traffic coming into Aspen, including that Aspen to Snowmass shuttle and shuttle from Snowmass Village back out. I'm here because the efficiency of the bus system is at stake. And as we're talking about investments, whether it's a buttermilk overpass, underpass, whether it's the money we're already spending on the Brush Creek intercept lot, whether it's the potential money to improve the connection with Snowmass and Aspen, they all run into the bottleneck of mixed traffic at the entrance to Aspen. And so I'm just here to tell you that I believe that unless mass transit is a priority, that perhaps this 3rd reversible lane is dedicated to mass transit. Otherwise, we're going to see our bus riders, our workers, our guests, our skier shuttles, all behind all the single occupant vehicle traffic. And sadly enough, the effort to reopen the record of decision is for the entire Buttermilk to Aspen corridor. And so that means that the potential of an underpass overpass, when you don't know what change is going to happen there, gets really difficult. I would not want to see those transit lanes, bus-only lanes, turned into single-occupant vehicle lanes, but it's a possibility. And so I think you all need to keep your eyes on the ball and decide whether mass transit will have a true priority or whether we will be spinning our wheels and spending money to hurry the buses into a larger traffic jam. Will it take 2 buses and 2 drivers to move the same amount of people because of the design flaws in the entrance? That's a question you guys need to ask. We're all paying 2.4 some odd mill levy now, commercially and privately, throughout the entire valley. We're all paying sales tax throughout the entire valley. This is a linchpin for all workers and all mass transit riders and for anyone with a goal of controlling traffic growth in the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Rachel. We appreciate that. Anyone else in the audience or online that would like to make a public comment? I'm gonna make sure does someone online have Megan, or Doug, can they?
I don't see anybody raising their hand.
Okay, great. So we will close the public comment period. Next up is going to be EoTC committee member updates. Is there anyone that would like to give us an update? Anyone online? Hi, Steve, go ahead.
Hi, I would like to make a comment. Speaking as the chairman of the RTCC of Northwest Cog, the RTCC is the Regional Transportation Coordinating Council, which deals with transportation of Medicaid patients and veterans to medical appointments primarily. The RTCC has a position called the Mobility Manager, who is an employee for Northwest Cog, and that position has been empty for some months now. John Stavney, the executive director of Northwest Cog, has been sort of moonlighting, filling in as the Mobility Manager. So in trying to figure out how to fill this position and make it more meaningful, we came across the idea of having a joint position with the Mobility Manager for Northwest Cog be a part-time position, and the other part-time for the person would be filled by an administrative person working for the Intermountain TPR, which Brian Pettit is the chairman of that committee. And I think Brian could address that. I understand that they have staffing shortages there and could use at least a part-time position working on that. So between the two of us, the Intermountain TPR and the RTCC of Northwest Cog, we have written a letter to CDOT asking if they would fund a joint position, which would be part-time for each of the two entities. And we just sent that letter out. Now we don't know what their response will be, but it would, I think, be really a good, important position to have a regional mobility manager who would be coordinating efforts of all the transportation systems in the Northwest Cog region, which there is the Summit Stage, the Eagle County Transit System, RAFTA, Snowmass Village Transit, the Glenwood Ride. Winter Park has a bus system. I think Steamboat Springs is also included in that. So I think, Brian, do you want to add some more to the discussion of that?
He said he's good.
Okay, so we just wanted to let you know that that effort is underway to find one person to fill those two positions for the two entities, and we will keep you posted as we go forward with that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the update. John, you have something?
I did have one comment.
Sure.
And I'm sure you all probably know a little bit about this, but last week, federal government gave approval to New York City for traffic congestion pricing. It's the first place in the nation. London's got it, Paris has it. Maybe it'll work around here.
Okay. Anyone else in our membership? Yeah, go ahead.
I know it's in our informational summary of our packet, but I thought I would just highlight the efforts between EoTC, the city, and Pickens County Open Space related to the exploration of a Brush Creek Park and Ride to Rio Grande Trail connection. That, we recently received a presentation from our open space and transportation team about that, but there is active public listening sessions happening. There's been a bunch of events in the month of June, and more are anticipated for July, as I understand it, along with a survey to the community. I think Picken County's reaction to that proposal was interest in seeing how this would serve as a transit connection. And I particularly am very interested in seeing people who, are thinking of that type of route for future transit or would use that type of route for future transit to weigh in. And now is the time, and we look forward to any and all feedback, good and bad, on that project.
Great, thank you so much. And is there a place where people can find out when
Yes. So yes.
Okay, Picken County Open Space website, that's where you can find out information.
PickenOSTprojects.com.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Anybody else online? I don't think so. I don't see any other hands. Okay. Oh, yes. Who's going? Did someone say something? No? I'm just hearing things. Okay. I think we're ready for the next action item, which is going to be a public hearing on the Buttermilk pedestrian crossing. Oh, someone speaking?
I did have another thing.
Yeah,
I just
go
wanted to react to Rachel's comments a little bit and request, if that's okay with others, I'd be interested in seeing kind of history of expenditures made over the history of the EoTC in terms of taxpayer funding that has gone into our transit system. I'm sort of interested, what is the cumulative millions that we have invested in this system? And if there's, if we could see some detail related to, at this year, this was the fund and that's how much went into it from whichever sources, and kind of moments in time, like when RAFTA started, or when we got the use tax, or just kind of a bit of a timeline of funding sources and what those cumulative monies have been. I think would be really informative for me to think about what our historic investment as a community has been.
Are you just talking about City of Aspen, E.O.T.C, picking? Is this on?
Is it on? Can you go ahead, speak more?
Question was, are you talking about just City of Aspen expenditures, Picken County, E.O.T.C, how far back?
Yeah.
What are you looking for?
I would be interested in our jurisdictions from the start of EoTC's investment and, recent, and what that looks like, because now we also make an investment via RAFTA, our RAFTA taxes that I'm not sure I need to know what Garfield, what Glenwood Springs contributions have been, but our three jurisdictions, I think would be illustrative.
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll get that.
Any other feedback online? Anyone want to comment on that? Okay, great. All right, now on to our public hearing for the Buttermilk pedestrian crossing. Linda, you want to take it away?
Yes, so we have our consultant team here, SGM. Mark Frymoyer is the project manager. Come on up, Mark, and fire up your presentation, and I'm going to let him introduce his team.
Hey, listen, Tori's having trouble linking in. I talked to your IT guy, and he emailed 2 links, but it still isn't working. Might be on Tori's end. Yeah, he's at home in town. His whole family's there, so I know.
Well, thank you to the EoTC for putting us on the agenda today and allowing us to present on this project. So as Linda mentioned, we have a team of from SGM and DHM here. So from SGM, this is Ashley Klein and Mary Jean Frymoyer. And from DHM, we have Jason Janes and Charlotte Francisco. And I'm Mark Frymoyer, also with SGM. We also had 2 other consultants help us on the project who aren't here. RJ Engineering did the geotechnical work, and ACL did the traffic and engineering study. Before I go on, I'd also like to recognize a couple other folks who helped us out. So obviously Linda, who there you are, who led this project for us and kind of took over midstream and kind of guided us to get us where we are today. So thank you for that, Linda. And also for Picken County, Snowmass Village, City of Aspen, RAFTA, and CDOT staff members who helped us out on the Technical Advisory Committee. I'm not going to name any names, but there might be a few over my right shoulder here. So thank you to everyone, and thanks for getting us to this point. So Picken County advertised this project last year, and so we've been working on this for a little over a year, and so kind of a lot has gone into getting us to this point where we're at now. So we're going to talk through the project background. We'll look at the transit signal bypass alternatives that our team studied. We also studied both an underpass and an overpass crossing at this intersection, and we did a comparison of attributes for the two different crossings, as well as a study of the cost. Lastly, we did a robust public outreach study, and DHM will present on the results of that study. So why are we studying this project? The big picture goal is to improve bike and pedestrian connections to the Buttermilk Up Valley and Down Valley transit stops at the intersection of Highway 82 and Owl Creek Road. As a potential side benefit, there's also options for increased transit speed, reliability, and efficiency. So one way to achieve that is through the transit signal bypass options, which Mary Jean will talk through in a little bit. But the other thing is just separating the grade for this crossing, which eliminates the pedestrian cycle from the traffic signal at the intersection. Last but not least, we want to hear from the public. What does the public want? Do they support this project? And if so, in what form do they support it? Do they want an overpass, an underpass? Are there other types of improvements they're interested in? So we engaged in a pretty robust public outreach study. So here's a picture of the project location. So as I said, it's at the intersection of State Highway 82 and Owl Creek Road. There is an at-grade crossing just south of Owl Creek Road. Sorry, I don't have my pointer up here, but yeah, just south of Owl Creek Road. A couple other things to point out on here. So for the project description, we've assumed Highway 82 runs west to east through the project site. You can see it absolutely doesn't, but for sake of simplicity, that's kind of how we're describing it. So the Buttermilk ski area is just south of the intersection. The airport is just northwest of the intersection. On the image on the upper right, you can see the Buttermilk Down Valley and Buttermilk Up Valley bus stops. And just off the screen, to the top of the screen, is the Harmony Lane intersection, which, as you all know, is not aligned with the Owl Creek Road intersection, which definitely presents some challenges on this site, which we'll touch upon. And then on the bottom right image, that's just a few of the trails that tie into this area. So the Aspen Airport Business Center trail is on the north side of State Highway 82. The Butterline Trail is in green on the bottom left of that image, which kind of goes left off the screen up to the Airline Trail, which ties into the Sky Mountain Park trail system. And lastly, it's a little hard to see on there, but the red dashed line is the future Truscott Trail, which will connect from the Truscott underpass to the Buttermilk Up Valley bus stop. So our scope of work for this project consisted of a few things. So the first thing we started with was a review of previous studies that were done. So SGM did a study, kind of a very high level warrant study back in 2018. And then Mead and Hunt did what they call the Upper Valley Transit Enhancement Study in 2021. And out of that, a couple of transit signal bypass concepts were developed. We also had an extensive fieldwork component that was included in this. So we did a geotechnical study, a field survey from on the ground, as well as a subsurface utility engineering investigation. From all that work, we developed concept level plans, which we're calling 10% level plans of both an underpass and an overpass alternative. And we use those concept level plans to develop a construction cost estimate to develop scale renderings of the intersection to show the public what these two options would look like. And 3, to identify any potential engineering challenges at these sites that will warrant further study as the design, or if the design progresses. And last but not least, throughout this process, we had a pretty robust public outreach and stakeholder engagement process, which DHM will talk through in detail. A couple things that weren't included in the scope is that this is really an engineering study. It's not really a warrant study or kind of a need study. It was really an engineering analysis of these two alternatives and to kind of help inform what those would look like moving forward. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to DHM, to Jason, to talk through a little bit about our public outreach process.
We're just going to introduce it right now, and then Charlotte's going to give you a little bit of a deeper dive. But I want to kind of talk about, as we lead into some of the information related to the study, give you a little bit of context and background for how we engage the public. DHM was brought on as a part of the team for the outreach planning and communications, as well as the graphic communications. And we set it up as 2 phases of outreach. And the first was really about getting information out that we were having this conversation. We know this has been looked at numerous times over the years, and recently we know it's an important conversation in the community. So we wanted to make sure that at the outset, before we had anything to lay out in front of everyone and say, what do you think of this? We wanted to get out and say, we're talking about this. Please know it's coming and be aware. And as a part of that, we know as outreach has transitioned, it's harder and harder to get people to come out to an individual open house. And believe it or not, getting people to come out and talk about transit and pedestrian crossings can be very difficult as well. And so as a part of our first phase of outreach, we did have an open house. It was not very well attended. There wasn't anything to point at and get excited about or get upset about. We were really just looking for what people are interested in talking about. And so we retooled for our second phase of outreach, and we went out and completely abandoned the destination open house and went out and talked to the community kind of where they were. We also had a significant online presence and an online survey as a part of that. And so the second phase was really where we rolled out, this is what these options look like with some graphics. These are what the costs might be. What's your understanding and your concerns about the intersection, and what would be your preferences if we were to be looking at moving forward with the grade separated crossing, and then adding in the cost conversation. Does that change your opinion of how we approach this intersection? So Charlotte will give us a little bit more of a deeper dive a little later in the presentation, but that kind of sets up how we reached out and engaged the public. That second time around, we felt like the engagement was very successful. We pushed out a significant number of emails, social media, newspaper, radio advertising, all driving traffic to the website, and that's how we got the interaction. And so there was a specific ask, there was a specific method for engagement, and we got a lot more traction that way.
Thanks, Jason. So before I turn over to the design team, I want to touch on what we're hoping to understand following this meeting. So there's really 2 questions. So one, do we want to proceed with the design? As I mentioned, we've left this off at what we're calling kind of a concept level or 10% design for these 2 alternatives. So question 1 is, do we want to proceed? And if we do want to proceed, do we want to proceed with an underpass or overpass? So those are the questions we're trying to answer. But to help look deeper into the details, I'll turn it over to Mary Jean to discuss the transit signal bypass alternatives.
Thanks, Mark. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what is a transit signal bypass. So it would provide a separated lane for transit buses at the 2 different T intersections with Highway 82. So buses would move through the light at Harmony Road going up Valley, and then they would also bypass the light going down Valley at Owl Creek Road. So as previously mentioned, these concepts were proposed by Mead and Hunt in their Upper Valley Enhancement Study. And then our consultant team and the technical advisory committee further evaluated these concepts as a part of our study. And the findings were, if you want more details, they're summarized in a memo that was prepared by ACL, which is included as an appendix in our evaluation report. So the team's recommendation was ultimately to not move forward with either of these alternatives. The first reason was safety. We were concerned with potential conflicts with buses moving at high speeds. If they're bypassing the light, they're not really slowing down. Then you could have vehicles that are stopped at the light. So you have that disparity in speeds, especially when you have a motor vehicle in conflict with a bus, would not end well. So on top, the top figure, vehicles would need to move across the bus lane, which is shown in that red dash line, in order to turn right on Owl Creek Road. And then in the bottom concept, vehicles would need to merge with buses. And of particular concern would be for vehicles that were turning left onto 82 from Harmony Road, just that their expectation wouldn't be, you'd have buses moving at a high rate of speed. You kind of think of that as a free turn. The second reason that we decided not to move forward was that in Mead and Hunt's study, this putting in the bypass lanes didn't really result in much savings in travel time. I think primarily due to the bottleneck being further up valley at the roundabout. And so now Ashley is going to get into the underpass and overpass concepts.
Thanks, Mary Jean. So I'm just going to go into a little bit more detail on the two different concepts that we put together as part of this study in this report. So first off, I'm going to talk about the underpass crossing itself. And I'm sure most people here are very familiar with what an underpass in the Roaring Fork Valley looks like at this point. So we really tried to model this off of similar underpasses in the valley. So again, the AABC underpass. Wow, and I'm even talking really loud, okay. The AABC underpass, the Basalt underpass, Willits, etc. So the design parameters we used for this underpass was a 12-foot wide concrete trail with a 16-foot wide underpass. We went with a wider underpass structure just because, again, you can feel really kind of constrained and confined when you're underground like that. So that 16-foot width makes it feel a little bit more open, a little bit more inviting. And then we went with a 9-foot vertical clearance on that underpass. So that put the entire structure about 12 feet underground. So you'll see these approach ramps on the south and the north sides of 82. And those ramps are ADA compliant, so we're making sure we're meeting that requirement of that maximum slope for ADA grades. And we also have on the south side those stairs there for a more direct connection for people if they didn't want to take that path, if they were parked in that corner of the lot or just wanted to get onto the sidewalk a little bit sooner right there. So you can see the 12-foot path shown there, as well as some thicker lines on the outside. Those are walls, and I'll show some renderings in a little bit here of what that would look like. But we weren't trying to make people feel like they were just down in a big hole. So really open concept, room to breathe, room for landscaping, some tiered walls, things like that. So just that open concept feel. You can also see here, Mark had touched on it before, the future Truscott Trail connection. And so these two concepts, or that future trail and this concept, would tie in nicely together. We're connecting to both BRT bus stops, the up and the down valley Buttermilk bus stops at both locations. And then another thing I'd like to mention, you can see this pretty lengthy northeast approach ramp right here. So this ramp is pretty long because, again, I had mentioned we're about 12 feet underground here. And if any of you have ever been on the ABC trail here, you know that it's significantly higher than 82 through this area. So we're having to make up a lot of grade. We're having to make up that 12 feet while doing it to be ADA compliant. So that's why you see that length of that ramp on that side there. The last thing I'll mention on this concept is we didn't put all the utilities on the sheet because you wouldn't be able to see anything else. There's a significant amount of utility running through this corridor. So there are going to be, with this concept, there would be massive utility relocations. So water line, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, gas line, electric, any communication lines. So that's a significant implication of this concept.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You can ask a question. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering regarding the south approach ramp, it looks like.
Could you please speak into the microphone?
Oh, I will. Pardon me. It looks like that south approach ramp looks like it would take up an acre of parking, if not more. Is that correct? Like, what am I looking at?
No, there's a berm there.
So this is just all green space right here. So the parking lot
That's
is
existing green space now, so that's not
Correct.
part of the parking. Okay,
Correct.
thank you. Okay, I get it. It's the berm.
And I'll have some renderings to show you that might
Okay,
show that a little bit
thank you.
better. So this will probably help clarify that a little bit. So this rendering, DHM's put together a bunch of really nice renderings that kind of show what this concept would look like in this area and how it would interact with the Buttermilk parking lot as well as State Highway 82. So basically right here, we're standing at the back of that Up Valley Buttermilk bus stop looking down valley. So you can see the light in the distance. That is the Owl Creek intersection, and just looking down this nice ADA ramp, open concept, with the Buttermilk parking lot on that left-hand side there. And this is just a view from those stairs that I had mentioned before, so, oh, did it not update on this? Oh, okay, there we go. All right, I'm talking too fast. So this is a view from the top of the stairs looking down into the underpass, again on that Buttermilk parking lot side, looking across 82 to the north. And then the third view is on the north side of 82, so this would be on the Maroon Creek Club side. Again, we're trying to create an open concept. We are 12 feet underground here, but with those tiered walls, some landscaping and things, kind of creating that open feel. So moving on to the overpass crossing, and when I say overpass, we're talking, a bridge, like a bridge structure through this area. So again,
I'm sorry, could you go back to the last one for 1 second? Yeah. So sorry to interrupt. So where is the bus stop?
So this is looking up valley, so the bus stop would be behind you.
Okay.
Yep.
So not too far from the underpass.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
It's still going to be a distance. It's going to be a distance. See, the distance to the bus stop.
So the design parameters here, again, we're going with a 12-foot concrete trail, ADA compliance, and a 12-foot structure for the overpass, for the bridge. And another thing I'll mention on this design is the overpass structure is shifted to the east a little bit more in this design, and the reason behind that is you'll see again this lengthy now on the northwest approach ramp, this really lengthy ramp. So we were working with a minimum 17.5-foot vertical roadway clearance, which that would be the bottom of the structure. So we're about 20 feet above the ground when you're actually standing on top of that bridge. So you're having to go 20 feet back down to get to existing grade. So that's why that northwest approach ramp is pretty lengthy, and the northeast is less lengthy because, again, it's higher above 82 and you don't have as far to go. So that's why that structure is really shifted over to the east, further away from the intersection in that location. So again, we're connecting to the future Truscott Trail here pretty nicely. Again, that additional length being 20 feet above the road, we had to actually switch back that south approach ramp, so that's what you'll see there, just because the length was going to be too great to do it in one straight shot like the underpass. And then again, we have stairs on that south side to provide that more direct connection to the parking lot in the area over there. The last thing I'll note on this is we have a pedestrian safety or throw fence across the bridge, and what we're talking about there is, anything to kind of protect pedestrians, or protect vehicles from anything pedestrians could throw over the bridge, or any sort of debris, or just any, safety hazard of a pedestrian being up that high. So in comparison, if you guys have been on the Wingo Bridge, there's a really tall, safety fence. Same with the Grand Avenue Bridge in Glenwood Springs, just a taller fence to protect those pedestrians. So again, you'll see that in this rendering. So here's a view looking up valley of a potential bridge in this location, and you can see that fencing I was just talking about. It'd be a normal pedestrian safety fencing when you're not, that elevated, is about 42 inches. We were proposing an 8-foot fence just so no one could climb over it or anything like that. So you'll see that there, and then also on the right-hand side, you'll see that ADA ramp switchback location kind of coming down there. And a similar view just looking down valley here, so you can see kind of how this interacts with the up valley BRT stop right here, and then the down valley is beyond the image on the right hand side there. So just kind of synopsizing and comparing really these two. It's nice to see them next to each other so you can kind of see the differences in the ramp lengths and things like that. Again, the underpass is going to be about 12 feet underground, and the overpass is going to be about 20 feet above ground. So again, that's those differences in those ramp grades that you're seeing, and why one's longer than the other and vice versa through there. So again, you can see more clearly here that the location of the structures is quite variable. The overpass, again, is a little bit further away from that down valley stop, but and also arguably, if you're going to take the ramp a little further away from the up valley stop as well, the stairs are pretty direct there. So, and again, another major difference I had mentioned, the utility impacts for the underpass option are very significant. There still will be some utility relocation for the overpass, but it will be much more, I don't want to use the word minor, but less significant. All right, and I'll turn it back over to Mary Jean.
All right, so as part of the project, as we updated the previous cost estimates for both concepts, so we base these estimates based on recent similar construction projects, and then also adjusted those costs for inflation, assuming that construction would begin in 2025. We've also provided separate costs for final design, construction, engineering, permits, and easements. So our project total cost is about $20 million for the underpass and $12 million for the overpass concept. So the majority of this, the construction cost, is for the structures, so that would be the bridge or tunnel, ramps, and walls, and then earthwork and the trail surfacing. But some of the other items that are included in that cost that were fairly significant were, as we mentioned, we assumed all the utility relocates within this cost. It's potential that some portion of that would be borne by the utility owners and not the project. We also included snow melt systems in both concepts, and then just traffic control throughout the construction is fairly significant. And then since we are at a 10% concept level design, we did include a contingency within the costs. So I just wanted to give a little bit of a summary or comparison between the two alternatives and a few different categories. So in this table, we've used, red to signify kind of a negative, yellow as neutral or pros and cons, and then green as kind of a positive. So obviously, as I just mentioned, for costs, the underpass is pretty expensive, and the overpass is moderately expensive. For the easements, it's pretty similar between both alternatives because the overall footprint for both both of the projects is about the same. I will mention that on the north ramp side that we're using the existing ABC trail alignment, and that is within an easement from Maroon Creek Club, which would need to be evaluated within final design. And then in terms of maintenance, the underpass would be pretty easy maintain. The majority of the structures would be made of concrete, so not too much there. For the overpass, the bridge over Highway 82, we've proposed as a weathering steel truss, so that would require some routine cleaning and potentially repainting or painting it in its lifetime. But as I mentioned, we accounted for a snowmelt system in both concepts, so that would minimize the regular maintenance of snow removal in the winter. And then for the user experience, we got a lot of feedback for this category in the public outreach survey. So definitely there are, pros and cons to both, depending on who you ask. For the underpass, some people express, concerns from safety because you're, underground outside of view of traveling public, or just kind of a dislike of tunnels. For the positive on the underpass, it does provide a more direct connection and less change in grade, and would also protect, from the elements while you're making that crossing. On the overpass side, some people express that as their preference, for safety, or just getting a better view while during your crossing. And then obviously the negatives, you do end up having a longer connection if you're taking the ramp because of the switchback, and then you'd require a greater change in grade, which some express a concern with that of walking up the overpass in ski boots. And then with that, I will hand it off to Charlotte to go over the public feedback.
Thanks, Mary Jean. All right, so I'm going to talk about the public outreach results and exactly what we did. So we had 2 phases of public outreach, which Jason mentioned earlier. The first phase involved a one-time open house event that we held in October. That had very low attendance, and we didn't really get a lot of feedback about the crossing during that open house. And we also didn't show any graphics about proposed solutions at that point, so there wasn't a great turnout in general because of that factor, I think, as well. So due to the low attendance to our open house, we wanted to shift how we did our outreach for the second phase, which happened from March to May this spring. And to do that, we strategized by thinking of some different ways that we could approach the public instead of having them come to meet us one time at an open house event. So we instead held some pop-up intercept events where we went to go meet people where they were. We had some target audiences of rafter riders and some users of that crosswalk specifically. And then we also had an online survey, so we directed a lot of feedback towards the website to take the online survey. And we did that through advertising, print ads, as well as online social media posts. We also had some email blasts as well. So some key figures that we're showing here, we had 331 survey responses. We talked to over 100 people at the pop-up events, 1,300 website visits overall. And then I'll go more deeply into the survey later, but just some demographics of who took the survey. It was open for a length of 48 days, and 85% of the respondents work in Aspen or Snowmass. Most of them ride RAFTA every week, and then about half live down valley and half lived up valley. Okay, so what we asked people was pretty specific so that we could get the feedback that we wanted. First, we wanted to know what people thought about the crosswalk and what their experience was. So we asked them if they felt safe or comfortable using that crosswalk as it is, and why or why not. And then if they would like to see a change, would they like to see a change in the form of an underpass or an overpass? And we showed those renderings that you saw previously from Ashley. And then also we wanted to know what their priorities were in terms of decision-making and how this project might move forward. What were their concerns and what should be the top priorities when designing in the future. And so our outreach, this is just a graphic of the website usage over time, and it's just choreographed with which outreach events we did when. So the pop-up events, we targeted, as I said, users of RAFTA and users of that crosswalk specifically. So we met people at park and ride locations from Aspen to Glenwood Springs. We had one in Basalt and Carbondale as well. And then we also did pop-up events at Buttermilk. We went up to the Cliff House restaurant on one of the Buttermilk Uphill Fridays. And we also did an event on closing day where we talked to bus riders going down valley at the end of the day at Buttermilk. And then we had print flyers posted throughout the valley, email blasts, as I said. We had 4 social media posts and newspaper ads that ran periodically as well. And that all pointed people towards the website and the survey. And that survey, we wanted it to be really open, so we made it a part of our website. Just on the home page, as you scroll down, you got to go to the survey. You didn't need a login. You didn't need to add your email or anything like that. It was just a quick, we wanted to make it short and simple for people to answer questions while they're on the go, since we were going to meet people at bus stops. So it was 10 questions long, and we directed people to the survey via QR codes mostly at the in-person events and through the advertising. So most of the feedback we got was through the survey, and I know there's a lengthy portion of the appendix that's about all of the survey responses, so if you want to look up all the really specific things that people said, you can go through all of those responses in your packet. But some of the major points are shown in the graphics above. So it was pretty mixed in terms of how people felt about using the crosswalk. Most of the people said that they don't feel safe using it. It's about 2/3 to 1/3 of respondents. And of the people who responded to the question on underpass versus overpass, it was also pretty mixed, but half of the respondents, 50%, preferred an underpass, and then 1/3 preferred an overpass. 14% said no change. We had a few quotes, which I'm not going to read them out loud, but we have some highlighted text for you, this sort of mixed bag as well in terms of whether they would support the project in general, whether they prefer an underpass or overpass, all a bunch of really entertaining comments that came through those sections.
Entertaining. Good choice of words.
And just some general sentiments that weren't conveyed through the numbers of the survey responses. We found that daily crosswalk users, or people who use it really frequently, found that it's less safe than those that use it infrequently. And a lot of people responded with some ideas about smaller interventions that could be implemented instead of an underpass or an overpass that might be a super costly investment. We also found that the pedestrian experience was different than those coming from the viewpoint of an automobile. Pedestrian might prefer an overpass experience, whereas an auto user might prefer an underpass due to not impacting the sights coming from the highway. And then lastly, we just have this little word cloud of some of the most prominent things people said when asked about their priorities for this project in the future. These varied in terms of people's number one priority, but some of the top responses were safety, cost, aesthetics, and the traffic that's going to be caused during construction. And then lastly, just anecdotally, we found that there was a lot more enthusiasm through the outreach for responding to this project than we anticipated, considering the subject matter. And we got a lot more responses through the survey than we expected to. So that was just an anecdote. And with that, time for questions.
We have a staff recommendation, but if we want to open it up for questions from y'all now before we talk about that, we can do that.
Yeah, I think let's ask questions.
Okay.
Does that work for everybody? Bill, go ahead.
Thanks very much. Thanks for the thorough presentation. My first question, I think, is my biggest one, and it might be outside of the scope of your study. But I'm wondering if there's ever been any other studies or even sketch studies of a vehicular underpass at this location to work on eliminating the light entirely, and that, of course, could work in conjunction with the pedestrian solution. Sure.
I'm unaware if CDOT has done any studies to bury traffic through the intersection. I think what I could tell you is that, you know, the impacts of a vehicular underpass would be pretty severe compared to a pedestrian underpass, just because of the width. You know, you got 4 lanes of traffic, you're moving underground, and then to kind of make the ramps work, you know, you'd be chasing that underpass back probably hundreds of feet, I would guess. So I don't know of any study that's been done, but I guess I could tell you I think it would be significantly more expensive. Obviously, there are huge surface benefits by kind of opening that all up, but yeah.
Thanks. To be clear, I wasn't necessarily envisioning burying all traffic. I'm trying to eliminate the turns and therefore the need for the light in my mind.
Got it.
I understand there's impacts, but I wasn't even thinking the way that you were thinking. Thank you, though. Secondly, did the design team look at elevators instead of ADA ramps at any point?
Yes, we did. Yeah, so in your packet, in the report that we did, there is a memo discussing an elevator compared to ramps. We progressed with the ramp option because we had reached out to a couple folks with CDOT and the city of Glenwood Springs regarding the elevator at Grand Ave pedestrian bridge, and they are a big challenge in this valley. So just a couple things they highlighted. One is that you need to build 2 elevators, because if you have one elevator and it breaks down, you've no longer provided equal access for the ADA requirements. So then I guess my understanding is you basically have to shut down the ramp at that point. So then you always build 2, and then getting service people out to the valley to service them has been really challenging. So there aren't many of them, and they don't live near here. And so I know, talking to the couple folks at the city, they've had elevators just sit dormant for, months waiting for service to come. So for all those reasons and more, we definitely got the recommendation from CDOT and the city of Glenwood to move forward with ramps.
Thanks. This question sort of ties along with elevators, I suppose, but are the impacts on utilities lesser if you go to a different depth, perhaps?
That's what I was going to ask.
So you're saying basically going under the utilities? You're saying,
I'm curious. I have no idea.
I would say maybe yes for some and no for others. The crux of the thing is, all utilities through this corridor aren't at one depth. They're not all 8 feet deep, or they're not all 2 feet deep. The shallow utilities, the communication lines and the electric lines, and are maybe 2 to 3 feet deep. The gas lines maybe 4 feet deep, and then the sanitary sewer and water lines are probably 8+ feet deep. So you're kind of in this zone, and you're gonna end up hitting a chunk of one or a chunk of the other. So we did originally have the underpass a little bit deeper, and realized we were to try to avoid some storm sewer relocation off of CDOT's kind of existing system here, and just realized with then the additional amount of ramp, because you've gone deeper, it really wasn't worth trying to save a utility locate, because you're still adding costs somewhere else. So yeah, we did look at that.
Understood. And lastly, could you elaborate a little on the smaller intervention ideas that you mentioned that, I don't know, if the public had suggested or maybe you guys contemplated? Please, thank you.
Musical chairs.
And we can also go over those in our staff recommendation too.
Okay,
But you
yeah.
can-
It was mostly from the public, just sort of saying things off the cuff while we were talking to them. Some people suggested having pedestrian-led light so that it turns walk signal before there's a green light. There was a suggestion to not allow right turns on red at Owl Creek Road. Someone suggested another roundabout. So, yeah, runs the gamut of practical and, yeah.
Thanks for all your answers.
Good. Good. Yes, go ahead, Patty.
Aviation, this FAA brought in, where we're putting a bridge at the end of a airport. That might be a obstacle that
Microphone.
we might have issues with.
There you
go. Oh. FAA, did anybody speak with them? They're our favorite persons of the day these days,
I wanted to
so.
say that at all today.
Yeah, I thought I'd bring them up just so we didn't forget about them.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So we didn't contact FAA directly, but we did review, so basically there's a limit. So, as you get further away from the runway, you can have higher obstructions. And so this is within the buffer area for the airport. The permanent structure, the permanent bridge structure wouldn't impact that buffer, but what probably would impact it would be the crane that would be needed to erect the bridge. And so there is a process that you go through that basically you send out a notice to airmen that tells pilots there's an obstruction and modifies the flight path if need be. That'd be kind of more of a final design thing and something that would be coordinated during, once you got to construction. But certainly a crane that would be used to erect the structure would be in the buffer.
Yeah, my concern is not the temporary obstruction, it's the permanent one. We've had people try and land on that section of Highway 82 before, without any success, and I mean, just because it's another access, another avenue if they miss the runway. And because of the fact we have so many pilots to fly in here that have no idea where they're flying into, we need to always keep that in mind, and that's a safety concern for me for doing an overpass. And having my histories with this intersection for many years, we've had public concerns about the view plane, the impact and coming or going. And, you also have to think about a signal being just after that bridge if you're going down valley, and it's going to be difficult to see if it's red, yellow, or green. So that's another safety issue. And the cost and the utilities has always been huge. And I know we're going to be bringing up some alternatives now where we can look at those issues with the no right turn on red. And for me right now, I think that's the way we should probably be headed, and see if that can, because Kelly and I both have experienced ourselves significant worries about trying to cross there. And I literally have had my hand on the hoods of cars making right turns as I'm going through that crosswalk. So it's definitely a safety concern, but I think there's some easier steps we might want to be looking at in the very near future. Thank you.
I took some great video today that I'd be happy to share.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, Francie.
I have a question about if we do either, actually, could we have a continuous down valley lane in the far right lane where they don't ever have to stop at that light? And why couldn't we?
For transit, you're saying?
Or for me in my car. For either. Maybe a merge with transit, but certainly for transit, but because there wouldn't be any reason not to have continuous traffic there that I can see.
But you have people coming out from out.
People coming out of Owl
No,
Creek.
on the far right, going down valley. Yeah. And
So you're
just-
saying they could have a,
The slip lane.
I think you were asking about like the down valley bypass lane.
Yeah, the far right lane.
And it could be evaluated, but as part of kind of the transit bypass study portion that we did, there weren't huge changes in that direction, just kind of in general, because that's not really where the bottleneck is. So at that time period, we didn't really pursue it, mostly because, it seemed like the bigger impact would be the up valley direction, and that had a lot of the safety concerns. So really, the up valley was kind of the driver of eliminating the bypass.
Well, I'm not talking about doing a bypass.
Right.
I'm just talking about having the far right lane not have to stop, not constructing anything. Just why would the far right lane have to stop going
You
down
would need
valley?
to have a barrier to separate, the traffic going through at the turn light. You
Right,
couldn't just have that right lane no stop through the intersection. It's not something that CDOT would permit. So you'd have to have some kind of physical barrier between the through lanes and the right turn lanes.
Right, I don't see that as an obstacle, though, having a small barrier there. But anyway, just a thought in favor of doing an overpass, because I do think it's a really dangerous corner. I do, however, think that no right turn on red would help. But I am in favor of an overpass, not an underpass, and I talked about this at our commissioner meeting because of the cost and also the impact on the area. It's a much less of an impact, and I think that the view will only be impact drivers for a very short period of time, and it's a long stretch where you see the beauty of the valley, and it's just a really small thing. So that's my opinion.
Or one thing I wanted to add, because I realized I missed it on my comparison slide, was the portion about construction duration. So the underpass would be a significantly longer duration and would have more impacts to traffic because you'd have to build the underpass in 2 phases. So you'd be shifting traffic over, whereas the majority of the work for the overpass would be outside the lanes of traffic. And then the bridge over 82 would come kind of like pre-assembled, and so it'd probably be like a weekend closure that would require to install the crossing over 82. So the overpass would have less impacts during the construction phase to traffic.
Thank you. Hold on, Greg, I think Steve's had his hand up. Steve, you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
For right now, I would favor putting off doing either the overpass or the underpass. I would favor the overpass also for the same reasons Francie said. There are very attractive overpasses in different places of Colorado that I think would be really nice. However, I think we should finish the Truscott Trail first, because that, I think, will divert some people from even crossing at this point. Maybe more likely bicyclists would cross underneath the highway at Truscott and just come up that other side. There will probably be some people walking also just from Truscott to go to the Aspen Country Inn or to Buttermilk on a nice day. Maybe not with their ski boots and carrying skis, but other times of the year. But more to the point, with the lumberyard project coming on, a transit center at the new airport terminal, a potential overpass or underpass in the location of the airport terminal and the lumberyard project, traffic light switches, the possibility of eliminating that Harmony Lane intersection and the traffic light there, because I think we should do a study to see if Harmony Lane could come into the same intersection as Owl Creek, to see if there's any way we could do that. That would make sense to me. I think those things should be figured out first before we decide or come back to revisit the idea of the pedestrian crossing at Buttermilk. And in the meantime, I think doing the low-cost signal changes and whatnot that are suggested, I think we should try those first in the meantime, while these other bigger items along that stretch of Highway 82 are playing out. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Greg?
Yeah, I guess I would say, to be succinct, I could echo what Steve said. I agree with what I've heard from Steve. I also want to look at the actual earth moving required by the 2 alternatives. It looks pretty big, pretty significant. And then also there's a snow melt part. And we have to understand that that requires energy inputs. Where would the energy come from? How would that be, what would be the cost annually? And then where would the energy come from, I think is significant. We can't keep just heating things up. So I'm concerned about that. And there are alternatives, like maybe heat pump systems, but it adds to the cost. So it's just something that should be considered whenever we talk about heating up outside ground. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Ward, did you have a question?
Yeah, is staff finished with this presentation? If not, I have some comments overall.
They're going to give a recommendation at the
Okay.
end. We're just going to take comments, and then we need to take public comment since it is a public hearing.
I do have comments, but I'll wait until they're finished and come back.
Perfect. Kelly?
Thanks, Bert. I will hold mine as well, but I do wonder, Greg brought this up Tuesday. If in the overpass option, is the grade level pedestrian crossing fully removed? How do you prevent people from just continuing to cross at grade?
Yes, at the beginning of our project and the study, that was our understanding that kind of the staff would recommend is we would eliminate the crossing, and which would, in order to eliminate the signal timing at the light, for vehicles. So that would have, some potential for improvement for traffic moving through there. I think just looking at some of the other the other BRT underpass crossings, and just kind of seeing what they've done in those areas with landscaping and fencing, and also in the way that we currently have the alternatives laid out, the ramps are kind of pushed back from where the sidewalk currently is. So it's not like the trail isn't like right next to the road that you would just jump across. So just sort of naturally of where the trails ended up being in the project layout, you are kind of removed from that at-grade crossing. But that would definitely be incorporated into the final design of, preventing people from just trying to cross at grade.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anyone in the room? No, I have comments on all of it. Okay. Anyone online? Okay. Is there any public comment on this item from in the room or online? I think I know everyone online. I don't think anyone's making public comment, and I don't see anyone in here. Okay, Linda, do you guys want to?
Blankenship's hand went up.
Oh,
and then
Dan,
down.
I see you. Hi, Dan.
Hi there. I guess I was going to wait to make comments until after the staff recommendation, because is this a public hearing, and would there be an opportunity to comment then, or you just want to hear what I have to say now?
I think either way. I mean, Linda was going to give the recommendation. If you want to comment after that when other people are giving comments, that's fine. I just wanted to see if anyone had any comments before we heard the recommendation from staff.
Yeah, I think I'll wait until after the recommendation, just to make sure my comments are on point.
Great. All right, thank you, Dan. Linda?
For some reason, my share isn't coming back up. My share screen.
Alyssa?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to leave at 5:25. I apologize. So just so you know, I'm
To hear the
ducking
Zydeco?
out of here. A duck? What?
To hear the Zydeco on the hill.
Oh, no, sorry. Nope, don't even know about that. Sorry.
No, I
But
should have
thank you.
planned better. You're not planned to stay.
I know, right?
Yeah.
No, I just have to be somewhere.
Okay.
Family.
So staff recommendation.
All righty, so our recommendation is that the cost-benefit analysis doesn't support a grade separation treatment at this time in this location. A few of the items, and the next slide I have has all the technical warrants and how they all add up. The Picken County SGM did a needs analysis study here in 2018 and presented it to the EoTC at the time. And so we're not really looking at any new technical warrants for that, but the EoTC decided to go ahead and do a more technical analysis of it. There haven't been any reported crashes between bicyclists and pedestrians and motor vehicles since 2018. The pedestrian volumes are significant only during ski season, and they don't meet a threshold for a grade separated crossing where there is already a signal. And of course the costs, we've already looked at those. And we've talked a lot about the lower cost design options that we could do here. One of the biggest comments that we got, and everybody is sort of aware of it, is the sort of turning movement from Owl Creek Road onto eastbound 82 is sort of treated like an on-ramp. People just kind of whoosh around there because they use the transit lane as an acceleration lane. We could prohibit that right turn on red. Right turns on red are being banned in a lot of places in North America. Seattle, New York City already bans them, Montreal, Toronto, Cambridge, Massachusetts. The state of Washington is trying to get them banned everywhere statewide. And that is because they don't necessarily serve an operational purpose, and over time we have seen that they greatly jeopardize pedestrian and bike safety with that movement. So they are something that are sort of going out of fashion in cities that want to promote bicycling and walking. And then of course we mentioned that when Owl Creek has the green, we can do a leading pedestrian interval, which is when pedestrians get several seconds of a green, and the right-hand turn there would have a red arrow. We would also need to invest in enforcement at these things at that location because, and we could step that up in the winter. We could look at funding that. And then there's just a lot of new pedestrian intersection design that is in our field now, where we would have a lot of options of different things we could do. So then we all know the higher priority needs for transportation funding in the valley. And then finally, we're not likely to even get a federal or a state grant to do anything here because we don't have reported crashes and some of the other technical warrants, which I've listed here. Of all of this, 7 or 8 technical warrants, only the 2 that I have bolded would support a grade separated crossing here. Francie, the other day you asked me about pedestrian volumes, and I actually gave you a wrong number. The pedestrian warrant here would be 300 crossings in a 4-hour period, and in March of 2018 there were only 121 pedestrians in a 3-hour period and only 177 in an 11-hour period. So the number of crossings really is quite low.
Was that during the ski season?
That was during March 2018. Yeah. So that's where we are on the staff recommendation.
Questions, comments? Ward, did you want to make comments? Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I thought this is kind of like one of those zombie projects that keeps coming back. I thought we put an end to this previously, but I'm happy to get out a wooden stake and put an end to it now. I think one of the questions is it safe? Is that intersection safe? No, I don't think it's safe. Does it warrant spending $12 to $20 million on it? No. It does not. The ski company previously indicated that they would not be interested in helping funding this. I think that there are some other opportunities. I think an on-grade extension of the Truscott Trail from the bus stop to that intersection and a connecting section perhaps to the trail that goes at the end of the up valley end of the runway is a possibility. I think something should be done, but I'm definitely opposed to spending more EOTC money on this project, doing more studies. I don't want to revisit it in the next 2 years that I'm on city council, and attending these lovely meetings at EoTC. But it's just, we have limited resources, and to spend them on this I think is frivolous. I don't think it's an effective use of tax revenues. I think it's unrealistic. If we could wake up tomorrow and have an underpass there, we didn't have to pay for it, we didn't have to maintain it, and I'd be all in on it. But that's not the case, and so I strongly support the staff recommendation that we've stopped funding this and put an end to an overpass or underpass.
Okay. Kelly, did you want to make your comments?
Yeah, sure. I agree with that, Ward. I don't think this merits. I think we have higher priorities for EOTC funding in the transit system. I would like our boards to give some direction about some of these other options for creating better pedestrian safety at the Owl Creek Road light. I live in Burlingame, which is accessed by Harmony Road. I'm at this intersection all the time. And I will share the video of just cars like zooming through, and I've been a pedestrian with 3 families trying to cross and like almost got hit, and I was like, God, I'd understand this if I was one person, but there's literally 11 of us on the road right now. So just multiple personal experiences at this. And in the morning when you're trying to get through the Owl Creek light and people are zipping through the Up Valley turn lane on red, anyone who has the green is getting stuck behind them and getting pushed further. Their ability to kind of move freely through the light is impeded because now folks who've turned right into the transit lane have to merge into the single Up Valley traffic lane. And there's been conflicts with buses, I think, too, with them being that lane. So I think that I'd like to see us direct exploration of effective tools to either have the pedestrian lights give in advance or a no turn on red with some sort of physical redesign of that turn lane. So it's at a sharper angle or whatever engineering techniques you guys use to really lower speed and cause an intentional right turn there, I think would be meaningful for bikers and walkers there.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will also say that I agree with Steve. I've been throwing this idea out a lot that as we do further 82 envisioning of lights and major infrastructure redevelopments in that area, it would be great if the Harmony Road light could go away altogether and be synced up with Owl Creek, which would require conversation with the Maroon Creek Club about how the 2-lane road would move between the parking lot for the affordable housing there and their tennis courts. But I would support kind of exploring those long-term planning conversations.
Great. Bill Madsen.
Yeah, I'd just like to restate my opinion that I've kind of stated over the years, and that is if we're going to do anything there, we should replicate the intersection that's at Maroon Creek and Tie-Hack and eliminate the stoplights at both Harmony and Owl Creek, and really focus on traffic there and pedestrian safety, so we could put cars and pedestrians in one underpass. And if utilities are a huge issue, then we should look at bringing in fill and raising the road up. But I think I'm in support of the staff recommendation to not do anything at this point.
Okay. Yeah, John.
Yeah, I concur with what Bill said, what Kelly and Steve have brought up. I think moving Harmony Road so that we turn the intersection with Owl Creek into one intersection instead of 2 has a tremendous amount of logic, especially when we start addressing the entrance to Aspen and enhancing public transit. The fewer crossings we have, the better off we're going to be I do support staff recommendations. It's not the time right now, but if we could look into changing 2 intersections into 1, I think that would be a benefit to our community.
Great. Bill?
Thanks. I echo everything that's been said. I also think that we need to look at our traffic flow issue from the airport into Aspen holistically and not piecemeal like this, and bring those great ideas like combining the Harmony Road and Owl Creek intersections together and have a conversation, and doing something like an underpass or an overpass at this location at this time might limit a lot of those future opportunities. So certainly support staff's recommendation. Thanks.
Great. Yes, Francie, sorry.
Yes, I also agree with putting it off. I mean, if we had to do something, I'd go with the overpass, but I think it's time for all of us to think about the entire entrance from the airport to Aspen as one problem and not piecemeal, as Bill said. And I think that we can accomplish that. We have some pretty good brains in the valley who are already thinking about it and working on it. So before we make too many decisions, except for small ones, Linda, like the no right turn on red, that kind of thing, I do think we should look at the entire system, including the lumberyard, the airport, the whole thing, the entrance to Aspen, as one problem, not 10.
Great.
Thanks, Alyssa.
Patty?
So,
You
do
want
you
to talk
want me
about
to share
Harmony?
my story?
You tell the story. Patty wants
Way
to
back,
do
but I
story
can't
time.
wait because I think Mr. Madsen was interested. When they were discussing putting in Harmony Road and not doing it at the Owl Creek intersection, there was issues with CDOT in the distance you have between signals on a state highway. Harmony Road definitely breaches that because of the proximity to the Owl Creek signal. But it just so happened that Governor Owens was playing golf at the Maroon Creek Golf Course with the general manager or the owner of the Maroon Creek Club at that time. And the next thing we knew, we had an intersection at Harmony Road, not the one that we had all supported, which was to be at Owl Creek, going straight through to to Burlingame. And now to try and do that, which is something I don't have a problem looking into, but there's the new the new housing complex that's behind there. There's a small parking lot, and then there's some maintenance facilities and stuff as part of the golf course. So that would probably be an issue of how to get an easement through there. And then again, but I don't have a problem looking into that. But so maybe one day we all need to go out and play golf.
And before we go any further, I just want to remind everybody that any discussion about lining those two things up is a CDOT
Right.
issue. We would certainly have input, and also EoTC is very limited as by our charter or whatever it is called, originating legislation as to how much time or money EoTC can spend on strictly motor vehicle movements. There has to be a seriously heavy transit nexus in there. So, this could be a bigger discussion for another much wider valley-wide transportation discussion.
It feels like a really busy traffic nexus when you're there.
Yeah, and this is a gray area, the transit nexus part.
Is there any other comments from any of us before you guys have any comments? Britta, go ahead.
Yeah, so as a Snowmass Village resident who's been turning right on not red for many, many years, I understand the safety issue certainly is the driver behavior is a big factor there. And I would be curious to experiment with that no right on red. The one thought I had was perhaps there would need to be a delayed opportunity for some engagement there, because my fear is a few years ago they had blocked off that ability to do that just temporarily, and it bottlenecked traffic all the way to the other side of Owl Creek. So just figuring out some of that would be my Snowmass resident.
We would, the first thing we would do is huddle up with CDOT and look at all of those turning movement issues.
Mhm.
Yeah, just a side note about right turn on reds, they were actually initiated in the 70s during the oil embargo as a way to reduce idling. They were not introduced as an operational improvement. So the history with them is strange.
Yeah, well, and I think the behavior there is definitely one of the
And we've
biggest
gotten used to
challenges,
them,
so.
right? We've gotten used to
Absolutely
using
something to
them.
look at.
Yeah. I mean, living in Snowmass and going that way, like to school and other things, I mean, I do that right turn a lot. And I will say that it is kind of confusing to people because some people will just stop on the red
Yes.
because they don't know that they can turn because they're confused by the bus lane and other things. So I think.
they hear
so
the
I-
honking behind them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think cleaning it up and making it, more user-friendly to both vehicular vehicles and to pedestrians, I think is going to make a big difference. And I think there's a lot of probably creative solutions we could come up with. Are there any other comments before I take Dan's comment? Okay, Dan Blankenship, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. If I've learned anything at RAFTA in the almost 34 years I've worked here, I understand which way the wind is blowing, and I have, maybe been drinking different Kool-Aid than some of the others, but I would recommend that the EoTC consider moving forward at least with design of one of the alternatives, whether it's the underpass or the overpass. Before this meeting, I wasn't aware that there were necessarily all these other things that were going on up Valley that you feel ought to be addressed in a comprehensive fashion. My question about that would be, well, how long is that process going to take, and what is the likelihood that those alternatives are going to happen in the near future? But what we have found, I think, in the Upper Valley and at RAFTA is if we have plans on the shelf, we can generally attract some grant funding. And I know that grade-separated crossings are expensive. We're currently contracted for $22 million for 2 pedestrian underpasses at 27th Street in Glenwood Springs. They're never going to get any less expensive, but we did garner $11 million in federal funding. Currently, RAFTA is contributing $150,000 to this preliminary study, and we have $500,000 budgeted in our Destination 2040 plan that is designated for the Buttermilk Underpass. And there are CDOT, Federal Transit Administration grants, Safe Street grants, DOLA grants, potential funding partners, and other grants that could be identified possibly to come up with the funding for the engineering work that would be required to put something on the shelf while you look for grant opportunities in the future. I respectfully disagree with Linda that this wouldn't attract any funding, because I'm not sure that any of the other underpasses that have been constructed and installed in the 82 corridor would have met the warrants that you're talking about. But yet we did manage to garner in many cases. For example, in Basalt, we garnered a significant amount of state funding. And at 27th Street, we got a lot of state and federal funding. We are trying to get people to use transit and to walk and to bike. And the numbers of people crossing at this intersection, 2/3 of which say they feel it is unsafe, may be artificially constrained because they feel unsafe. And so if it were safer, maybe more people would be using this crossing. And the question is this area, is this bus stop and the surrounding area going to always be the same as it is today? Will it grow? Will it develop? May there be potentially more traffic, more accidents, and so forth? So I would encourage the EoTC, and I recognize that there's a strong possibility that I'm in a very, very small minority in terms of my viewpoint, to not close the door, at least on the engineering piece of this, and at some point to make a decision about should it be an underpass or should it be an overpass. And then I think RAFTA would be willing to look for grants to help fund the engineering study and conceivably to help pay for it as well. If you decide to go a different route, and I applaud the group for saying, let's do something in the interim to make it safer. and I'd love to see those kinds of improvements made. But I think it would also be wise to have some plans on the shelf to put into effect if, in fact, we could be successful in getting some grants in the future to help pay a significant portion of the cost. So thank you for your time and consideration. We have been successful at RAFTA, I think, over the years because we didn't do a comprehensive valley-wide plan on everything. We incrementalized and made improvements where we could, when we could. And had we not done it, we would not have the system that we have today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. We appreciate the feedback. Anyone? Yeah, Ward.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. And since I'm no longer on the RAFTA board, I'd suggest that RAFTA spend the money on it. If RAFTA could fund the engineering study, I could support that, but I just don't want EoTC time and money to go towards this project.
Got it. Any other? Oh, go ahead, Dan.
No, I was just, thanks for that, Ward, because like you were saying, if it was paid for by somebody else, you wouldn't object to it. I mean, I think everybody at this meeting would feel like some type of a grade separated crossing would be better to have it than not to have it. It's just a question of how it's paid for.
Anyone else? Anyone else online? Steve?
Yeah, I would not put any money into engineering that right now until we figure out the Harmony Lane thing. Because if we did end up having Harmony Lane intersect at that Owl Creek light, that could change where the location, the approach to the overpass, underpass. So I don't think we should try to engineer it yet until we have a little more certainty in what the topography is going to be around that location.
Great, thank you. All right, well, we need to put forth a decision, so I would take a motion if someone wanted to make it. Ward?
I will move that we support the staff decision not to proceed with engineering studies or further study of an underpass or an overpass at Buttermilk and at Owl Creek Road and Highway 82.
Should we add to that that we support staff moving forward with the other recommendations?
Yes.
Such as looking at do we need to add that to this motion?
Yeah.
I'd accept that.
Okay, great. So we have a first, we have a second. Any other comments? Okay, then we'll take a roll call vote. Perfect. Town of Snowmass Village.
Just before we do,
yeah,
it wasn't real clear what the motion is. Can you just repeat it?
So the motion is staff's recommendation to move forward with staff's recommendation of not moving forward with. This is a double sentence there. With not moving forward with the overpass or underpass, and to have them explore these alternative options, including Harmony Way, the right turn on red, all the other things that were in the packet.
Great, thank you.
Great, everybody clear on that? Excellent. Okay, Snowmass Village, aye for me. Mayor Mattson.
Aye.
Tom Fritzstein.
Aye.
Britta Gustafson.
Aye.
Susan Rolt.
Aye.
Great. Picking County, Francie Jacober. Aye. Steve Child.
Aye.
Patty Clapper.
Aye.
Kelly McNicholas Curry.
Aye.
And Greg has already left us. City of Aspen, Mayor Tory. John Doyle.
Aye.
Bill Guth.
Yes.
Ward Howenstein.
Aye.
Sam Rose.
Yes.
Great. That all?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. We really appreciate it.
So we've got to blast through our work plan updates real quick. So I'm going to have Sam Garino from Village come up real quick to talk about transit in Snowmass.
There's like a little bug in here. No, it's not a bug.
Hummingbird.
I think it's coming from one of the computers.
Okay, Sam Guarino, Transportation Director for the town of Snowmass Village.
Hi, Sam.
So I got a couple of updates on Snowmass Transit happenings. The first, the Transit Center. It's been a little bit since we've talked about the Transit Center at the E.O.T.C. In the spring of this year, as many or likely all of you know, the Snowmass Village Planning Commission voted 6-1 to deny approval of the application for the planned Snowmass Village Transit Center. Subsequently, staff withdrew the special review application, and then council directed staff to look into other potential options, reiterating support for improved transit at the Snowmass Mall. The staff has considered a number of options, and after a work session a couple weeks ago with the town council, we're investigating the possibility of making a number of smaller, lower impact changes to the areas around the RAFTA and the village shuttle depots, in the hope that the possibility for significant improvements without significant impacts exists. We're all still in the very early stages of investigating feasibility of these different improvements, but we're hopeful that we may be able to quickly develop some sort of alternative that still meets many or all of the original goals. So right now, that's where we're at with the Transit Center. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions? Online questions?
Okay, and then rolling along, the regional transit system analysis. This is Mark Warner gave a presentation at the last meeting. You may remember he had suggested some improvements to service to and from Snowmass to Aspen in the summer. With when those had come in, the construction on Brush Creek this year, continuing driver shortages. No changes have been made for this summer. RAFTA is continuing to evaluate, and hopefully they'll have a feasibility benefit analysis back to us later this summer, and we'll see if we can implement anything in the future, or they'll see if they can implement anything in the future.
Perfect. Thank you. Any questions for Sam? Yeah, go ahead, Francie.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Alyssa, I guess I'll ask you, I'm wondering why you guys voted that down, because I didn't listen to the meeting. I'm sorry.
Oh, Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm asking why they voted down the proposed plan, and because I didn't get to listen to the meeting. I'm just curious what.
How long do you
some of the
have?
reasons
No,
were.
You know, we had a switch over in council in the time from when we first looked at it till the time, till now. And so there wasn't a lot of support for it. I'm not sure that people are objecting to a transit center, but the scale, the massing, the way that it looks, the impact to the mall while we're rerouting the road and doing all these things, I think as a whole, it was too much for people to sort of wrap their head around right now. The recommendation from the Planning Commission was to not move forward. For me, it was personally very difficult because we had, Sam had worked very hard to secure all this grant funding, which I feel like it's like one of those things, if you turn it down, will you ever get it back? And we can't necessarily reuse it. Maybe some things we can, but not
We're trying to work
into its
fast.
entirety. It was also very costly. The numbers kept going up and up and up. Tom's on, I know he had serious, issues with architectural design. If anyone else wants to chime in, feel free to. But that was sort of the gist of it. I mean, I think people feel that Snowmass has a certain character and that it did not fit the character. I also think there's just been a lot of construction in Snowmass with Base Village and the roundabout, and now the road being torn up till November, which we couldn't help. It wasn't our fault. So all those reasons combined.
Yeah, and I'm happy to just add quick. I mean,
Yeah.
I sat through the 8 planning commission meetings.
Yes.
Which, you're welcome.
Yes.
They listed 8 reasons, but they were you mostly explained safety of pedestrians crossing in
Yes,
front of
that was
buses
very
was one that didn't come up. That was mentioned.
Yeah.
That was in the design as proposed. Size and scale not meeting a just big enough aesthetic, if you will. There was construction length and impact was those 3 were the big reasons why we heard from not just from the Planning Commission but from the public.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I could just add in very quickly, I think there's great support for a combined transit center, but as this developed, it was clear to many people that the design was flawed, and the design team was not receptive to looking at alternates and just kept going down a road of a design that had great objections from the public and others. And that's for what happened. We'd love to get it going again. Personally, I think a 2-level solution would be terrific, but right now nothing's happening.
And we are going to be exploring those options. I mean, I think for anyone that takes the bus to Snowmass, like it is, you know, there's a lot that isn't safe about it right now. And so there are things kind of like this intersection that we were just talking about that could be done without doing this massive scale. Steve, go ahead.
Thank you. One thing I was intrigued by the idea of putting up, I think it was parking, but I'm not sure. Maybe it was the transit center going over lot 6. And I still see that there could be possibilities of having put a roof over one or more of the numbered lots and have parking there. It would be a parking expansion of your parking, or it might be staging for buses, not for cars. But I think that could still be an aspect of something that you could do, is just, if it were lot 6, the existing parking would be under cover, so there would be no snow on the cars there, or, you know, that sort of a thing. But it would provide more parking, which, if you saw that as desirable in that or different locations on the numbered lots, could be something you could still look at. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Sam or for us from Snowmass Village?
Thank you, Sam.
All right, thank you so
Thanks,
much.
everybody.
Next up is going to be the Brush Creek Park and Ride project update.
Real quick, it's going great. Temporary parking's working well. We've had almost no, yes, thanks, Sam. No issues from the public about how we've managed out there. We had a huge event. Snowmass does its big Ragnar run, and it was managed really well in the temporary parking spaces, which bodes well for the Jazz Festival in September, which is going to be, we're still going to be under construction during that. So project's on schedule. And Picken County, we just put in a grant with Holy Cross Energy as a partner to fund the EV charging infrastructure, both the short term and then the longer term charging, and then the more expensive fast charging infrastructure. Pete, please come up. Newcastle,
Let me just
Newcastle
ask, did
Creek.
anyone have any questions on Brush
sorry.
Creek? Anyone online? Okay, go ahead, sorry.
You had 10 minutes to discuss the Castle Creek Bridge.
I'll do it in 2 minutes. This is an update. When we last met, we said that we were going to our Aspen City Council on May 15th. That was done. What came out of that major was that council at the time did not support proceeding with the record of decisions preferred alternative at that time with the RFP that was out. At this time right now, council did direct staff to pursue an investigation into the existing Castle Creek Bridge, into the structure, the ramifications of kind of how you would phase reconstructing the bridge, some of the impacts on that, and a little bit of the EIS component of that. It is important to note that council does have Aspen City Council does have a prioritization of transportation and mobility through the council city goals that is going to be looking at several items relating to traffic demand management, a comprehensive traffic study, which we'll dive into, which is going to, as you've heard tonight, probably be a little more comprehensive with E.O.T.C, and really diving into the last mile options and how we can improve the mobility along that side. That's the 2-minute update for the Castle Creek Bridge.
Great. Questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Patty.
What was the bridge they built in how many days? 11 days?
I-95.
I-95, yeah. So we think we need to model any bridge work we do after whatever they did there and got it done.
I'm sure our engineering and building departments are of the same size as Philadelphia's.
John?
That bridge wasn't rebuilt. It was, they just filled in underneath and paved over the top so they could get the traffic moving. There's nothing,
Options, right?
there's not traffic used to go underneath it. Right now, there's no option for traffic to go underneath that bridge.
Interesting.
So, I mean, yeah, it didn't take long, but it's not back working the way it's supposed to be.
Questions online from anyone about the Castle Creek Bridge? Yes, go ahead, Steve.
Well, let's fill it in underneath the Castle Creek Bridge and build a big dam and back up Castle Creek. We could have a new reservoir there. Tongue in cheek, of course.
I do have a
Solve
question.
the whole problem.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead, Francie.
I'm sorry, Pete, but I'm not quite sure what the whole picture is then. So what you're saying is there's not going to be any further pursuit of the record of decision, and we're going to look on how to rebuild the bridge, and that's where we are?
I would say that right now there was a lot of questions surrounding how we could do it without going through the preferred alternative, and they're exploring those options individually, and most of it involves the existing Castle Creek Bridge replacement.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, go ahead, Ward. Or comments?
I turned it off because it's.
You guys will figure it out by the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
You got 2 more items.
Okay. Yeah, I think that Rachel Richards expressed some of my same sentiments. I don't think we've decided not to do the record of decision or the preferred alternative, but in my mind, before we proceed full speed ahead with the preferred alternative, we need to be fully informed of what the ramifications are of proceeding with replacing the Castle Creek Bridge in its original location, which means retaining the S-curves.
Okay. Yes, Steve.
Once more, then this time is serious. The city of Aspen, I feel, has been going this alone. You do you take some cursory public input. You have some really thoughtful people who have been thinking about this a long time who do not live in the city of Aspen. They maybe commute every day over that bridge or ride rafta every week or a couple times a week, in my case, who have really good ideas about solutions there. And I would urge the city to broaden your outreach and have a work, a day-long work session where anybody can come and provide input and toss some ideas out and really try to come up with creative solution for that whole issue. I think about that and the airport every time I come to Aspen on a rafta bus, because I'm sitting there looking at the things and thinking about them every day, literally. And so you should take advantage of me and other people who have some really good thoughts on it. We're not voters in the city of Aspen necessarily, but I think the city should, get vast public input before proceeding on anything. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Bill.
Thanks, Steve. I'd love to hear your ideas on that. Feel free to email them to me and others if you want to. My hope is that we can have a comprehensive traffic improvement study that incorporates the bridge work and potentially more than one bridge from the airport all the way into the core of town. So I would love to hear ideas. I'd love to feed those ideas to somebody who understands all the nuance of traffic engineering. But I do, again, believe that we need to look at this holistically and not piecemeal one bridge here, one overpass there. Thanks.
Ward.
Yeah, my comments briefly is to ask Pete if he could forward to Steve and perhaps all of EoTC a summary of the public outreach that has been carried forward in the last year or so. And I mean, Steve, there's been outreach and surveys for decades, but I think just in the last year, the summary of the public outreach pop-ups, all of the input that we've been looking for. Thanks.
Any other comments? All right, we will move on to HOV lane enforcement.
We're hoping to bring CDOT to this meeting in August.
Thank you. That's very exciting, very quick.
And then, oh, sorry, very quick. I apologize. There's a little funky delay here. So, permanent automatic vehicle counters, we're starting a pilot with this one provider, technology provider, Precor. They're doing it for free. They're setting it up in the next couple of days. It's going to be at roughly in the area of Lumberyard, so we're going to get to see how that technology works to see if that's what we want to buy for the permanent counters. They're going to pick up, we're going to test it for traffic volumes, vehicle class, and speeds. And then this is the list of the permanent counter locations that are in the general project. And you guys, I believe, have seen this list before. So we're really excited to get this technology in and see how it's going to work for us. And that's all we have.
Bill, go ahead.
Could you give me one or two examples of what you might do with that data once you get it?
Oh, mercy. You know what? Yeah.
Okay. There is a ton we can do with this data. So a lot of the constraints that you're talking about at Buttermilk and Lumberyard, a lot of those are based on vehicle counts. Our 1994 record of decision is based fully on vehicle counts. This technology that we've had in the road is 30 years old at this point. We have to go out there manually and get like a tape deck. It's pretty cumbersome. And there's been some questions about what is the entry to Aspen with power plant and this whole corridor. And the more information you have, the better decisions you can make. And so if we have something that's real time and for the public, that would benefit us a huge deal.
Thanks.
And it also accounts more than just vehicles, doesn't it do vehicle types as well and speed, I heard, right? So it collects more information than just the number of vehicles?
Yeah, we're going to know if the vehicle is passenger car, pickup truck, big hotel van, bus. That'll be really useful. We also, our idea also is to have a report every year with the vehicle counts, but also bike and pedestrian counts, because it's going to count the ABC path, and also at that time include transit ridership, so that every year we'll have a report of everybody that's traveling in the area and how they're getting there. That's my plan and goal.
Any other questions on this?
No questions. I have a closing comment.
Steve.
Does this count the number of passengers in a vehicle, or does it just count the vehicles?
It does not count number of passengers in a vehicle. But I know that in the past, David Pesnichak, my predecessor, gave a presentation to y'all about the carpool technology that's available out there, that's smartphone activated, that is possibly something we could look at in the future, but this doesn't do that, no.
Okay. John, did you have a comment?
Just a closing comment, so I can wait.
Does anyone have any other questions about the vehicle counters? I'm most excited about the speeds. Because I feel like people are just driving crazy fast. And now having kids of driving age, it's like even scarier. So, okay. Go ahead, John. You want to make a comment?
So back to, we were talking about looking at, let me back up. The reason I voted to continue the Lumberyard project during Aspen City Council meeting 2 weeks ago was because we have 3 big projects in front of our community right now we're talking about nearly simultaneously. Entrance Aspen, Pickens County Airport, and the Lumberyard employee housing, which is the largest single expenditure the city of Aspen is going to make. They're all in fairly close proximity to each other, and I think they should be looked at comprehensively, as has been stated here earlier. There's a gentleman named Edward Olemans who has a kind of a master plan for the entrance to Aspen and various components that the airport's part of, lumberyard housing is part of, and 4 out of 5 members of Aspen City Council has seen his presentation. Michael Miracle from the Aspen Ski Company has convinced his boss, Auden Schendler, to donate $25,000 to refine this plan. And I mentioned during our meeting that I had reached out to the county commissioners, so most of you are aware of it. Steve Child, this might be new to you, but I also wanted to make sure that the town of Snowmass Village has an opportunity to see this as well, because some of it might seem a little far-fetched to some people, but there's some really, really brilliant components to this. And I think ski companies donating $25,000 to it speaks to that. I think it's a valuable piece of information that everybody in this room should be aware of.
Is it a presentation?
It is a presentation.
Yeah, and we're kind of looking at maybe getting on one of our future agendas.
Yeah, I was in contact with Edward the last couple of days, today actually, inviting him to have a public presentation of his ideas, because it's well worth everybody looking at.
Our August agenda is a little bit light. We're just talking about the Truscott Trail, and then if CDOT can come and talk about the HOV lane, there might be an opportunity there if you all want to direct us to do that. But
I'd be interested.
Yeah, definitely.
Anybody else?
Do we have a meeting in August?
Yes, the
This is
next
the
meeting
Dutch
is
gen-
August 31st at Pitkin County.
I knew that.
Someone should know.
and
No.
this is the Dutch gentleman, correct?
Yes.
They're pretty smart when it comes to transportation.
It's bike-centric.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
transit, it's everything. It's the mothership.
If we could get that presentation, I think that would be good
Yeah, I'd like to
information.
see it.
Since we're all going to be there.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay.
So yes, our next meeting is August 31st at Pitkin County. Francie's the boss. So I would now take unless anyone has any other comments, I'd take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Beat you to
Second.
it again.
Okay, I have to do roll call votes, so don't go anywhere yet. Okay, Snowmass Village, myself, yes. Bill Madsen,
Yes.
Tom Fridstein,
Yes.
Britta Gustafson,
Yes.
Susan Roll,
Yes.
Pitkin County, Francie Jacober, Steve Child,
Yes.
Patty Clapper,
Aye.
Kelly McNicholas Curry,
Yes.
Greg has left, City of Aspen, Mayor Tory, John Doyle,
Yep.
Bill Guth,
Yes.
Ward Howenstein,
Yes.
Sam Rose.
Yes.
Great, thank you all for coming to Snowmass.
And good job, Alyssa, you do an amazing
I've never
job.
chaired this meeting before, so yeah.
And I gotta go rest
Good, we're done. 6:05.
I was taking notes because I'm Mayor Pro Tem now.